We're going to talk about situational leadership. It is a model of a type of leadership, all right, that was first attributed to Ken Blanchard in terms of just a way to lead your people. Some of you are probably doing it. You just don't have a name on it. You know, I think that's what I find a lot as I go to conferences or workshops, like, oh, I do that, but I didn't know this is what it was called, or it was something that somebody has already been doing or wrote a book on or whatever. So we're going to work through this model of situational leadership. We're going to talk about it. You're going to practice doing things with it. You're going to go through a few case studies. You'll talk with each other about it so we can just get a handle on what it is and how I can help practice it in my organization. If you're in a management position, some type of leadership position, team leader, managing people at some level, it really is a great tool to use. So we'll go through it and practice and see what you think. So anyway, my name is Cindy Schisler. I am with Wright State University. I've been there, oh gosh. I've probably been at Wright State about 28 years now. So I retired. I was the training development specialist for the university for my career there. I also adjunct on the side, and that's what I'm still doing. I'm in this College of Business, and I teach several classes every semester. Situational leadership. What is it? It's a model to help supervisors manage and develop your employees. All right. It's kind of an adaptive leadership strategy, if you want to call it that. A leader needs to understand how to move from one style to another. You're going to take an assessment in a minute that's going to show maybe what your preferred situational management style is, but there's no right or wrong, and the assessment is to show you where your preference is, but to make you aware that you're going to have to learn to be able to use all of them to be successful. How many of you have kids? All right. How you have more than one kid? Are the kids just alike? Can you do the same thing with all the kids? No, they're not cookie cutter. So you have to find a different strategy, a different way to approach them, work with them. This is really how it is as employees. I'm not referring to employees as children, but we have different needs and ways we learn and how we're going to work with them. All right, key thought here behind situational leadership. So we need how to move from one leadership style to another to meet the changing needs of the organization and the changing needs of employees. All right, so this is the process we're going to go through. So in your first handout that has the front page on it, there's something called the preferred assessment situational style. I'll get you one of these off of here. And you've got 12 statements. All right, and what you're going to do is circle the one that most closely represents what you would probably do. There may not be your perfect choice here, but humor me and pick one that most closely represents, all right? Then there is a score sheet toward the back, and you'll look at question 1, and then you'll circle what you chose, A, B, C, or D. I will say there's no right or wrong, good or bad style. You'll have a preference. Some of you might be divided pretty evenly between a couple. And I just want you to understand, to use situational leadership appropriately, you need to be able to use all 4 styles of leadership. So if you have a strong preference, and I don't think Melissa will mind me sharing it, her preference is on participating, and it's strong. I have it too. So I tend to, when I want to work with an employee, start from that preference, when it's not always the right one to start with. You need to get there, but it's not always the right one for me to start with. But if your preference is strong, you're going to tend to see things through that perspective, and it's that way in any assessment you take. And then again, learning to use the other styles and how to adjust. Before we get started on talking about what this assessment means, what it looks like, situational leadership looks at 2 things. It looks at directive, and we need to be able to use a directive approach. And this is the part where you're telling people what needs to be done as a supervisor. You're setting goals, you're figuring out how you want them accomplished, how you want your employees to work toward accomplishing these goals. And you may more closely supervise someone. Definitely more hands-on, all right, that part of the job. The other piece we look at is called supportive, which everybody fell into that category, all right? And this is based on 3 composites. One's the task behavior. This is the job they're doing. You're looking at how they're doing it. So we're looking at how much guidance and how much direction I'm going to need to give this individual. We're also looking at relationship behavior, they call it. It's also support. How much encouragement, how much praise, how much way to go, you're doing a good job. How many sitting down, again, showing people how to do things. Is all this support piece, which you guys already have a preference for it. So I looked at it as a very positive thing because this is the other half of what situational leadership is. And maturity doesn't mean how mature they are as an individual. We all have some employees that we probably think have 0 level of maturity, but that's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about their readiness level or confidence to do the job. How confident do they feel in doing it? How ready do they feel? So let's say you set goals out for someone. Wow, I think I can get part of this. I'm really not sure what she means down here, or how am I really going to accomplish this? So the maturity level is, where do you think they're at in terms of being able to accomplish the task? So how does it work? We're going to look at 4 main styles of supervisory leadership, and we're also going to look at 4 types of employee readiness, all right? So this is basically off of what you just came up with. So S1, it's also called telling, because this is more of a tell with an individual. The leader will tell people what they need to do and how to do it. All right, like I said, more hands-on supervision. You may create the roles and objectives. You make the decisions in this role, and you communicate what those goals, roles, decisions should be. All right, so it's kind of a telling is what they call it. Hop forward back on our model here. Sometimes it's called an enthusiastic beginner. And we look at directive leadership and supportive. Low in competence, all right, if they're new or it's a new task for them, they may not have the skill set already, but they're high in commitment generally, all right? Think of a new employee. Your new employees come in and they may have experience from another job, but typically you have a new culture and maybe a different ways of doing things. So maybe the competence might be a little bit lower, but typically we come into new jobs with lots of commitment, and enthusiasm. But they need strong direction. S2, all right, or selling. This is where a leader may try to sell their ideas to encourage people to buy into their processes. We are open to other suggestions and ideas. So going forward, this would be an S2. We go, disillusioned learner. What could this mean? So let's take the new employee again. On the job a little bit, and all of a sudden, the variable competence, they're learning some things, may not always be there totally. Low commitment, what's happened to the high commitment here, and all of a sudden we go down a little ways and there's a low commitment. So in thinking in terms of a new hire, what could this mean? Why could high commitment all of a sudden come down to low commitment? And any thoughts?
Work environment, it's changed for them.
Okay, change in work environment, doing some things different, it's new. It can be things as basic as just a new group of people, or who am I hanging out with at lunch? Those things can impact it, and don't think they don't. I don't want to get on a side conversation, but one of the biggest struggles I have found in organizations, we hire new employees. I can't tell you how many organizations say, welcome, Melissa, here's your nice desk, here's a computer. If you need anything, girl, I'll be around. Basically, that happens. Maybe a few directions, no buddy system or anything in place to introduce them to new people, nobody set to take them out to lunch the first few days. Nothing happens to help build the feeling that I'm part of this organization, all right? That can drive down low commitment also, all right? It also can be that, oh my heavens, I thought I understood this, I feel like I'm in over my head, and the enthusiasm is going down. So we'll be telling you what to do on this in a moment. So that's the S2. So the leader who, if you score in that, it's more of a coaching. They're going to need you to come beside. They're going to need you to coach a little bit more, but you're going to have to lead them through. You may have to, lots of praises. They need encouragement. You may have to do a little bit of retraining them of what to do, and just coach them through the process. They're the coach at this piece, all right? So you're going to have your coaching hat on. S3 is what we call participating, all right? Or what would we call it here? Supporting. This is S3. you offer less direction. So the idea is, as the employee's working through the organization, working through their work, their goals, their projects, whatever they're doing, they need less direction from you. Ideally, they should be learning to do things on their own. They need less direction from you. And you need to encourage people to take more of an active role in making decisions. All right? More of an active role in making decisions. You can do this. I have confidence in you. You know what? You decide how this should go. Capable but cautious. Their competence is going back to being higher because they feel more comfortable on the job. Variable commitment, which makes sense, and I think that's for all of us at any stage of a job. You get something new to do, and am I doing it right or not? Still needs some support, that relationship piece, but not as much as they did. And delegating is the last one. It's an S4. As a leader, you are less involved. You're definitely going to take a more hands-off approach. Typically, your employee has lots of experience, maybe even be able to do the job better than you can. You touch in with them, you just don't walk away and never touch base with them. But we definitely have more of a hands-off approach. Many organizations have this pyramid model, organizational model, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you have the top dog up here, all right, and then you have different levels of management or employees going down. Typically, we tend to look at the person I'm responsive to is the person who is over me, okay? So he's kind of reporting here, you're kind of reporting here, you're kind of reporting here, you're kind of reporting there. That's a structure that has been in place for a long time. What that does oftentimes is it leaves this person, this supervisor, this leader, this manager, feeling like they're the ones that have to do all the work. I have got to create all the goals. I have got to plan everything. I have to execute everything. I'm the one who does all the work. So if you're in an organization and you're feeling really heavy in a lot of the work, I would ask myself your question, how much are we delegating down to our employees? So let's flip this back around again. So basically, if I'm putting the top dog down here, and the levels here, who's this indicating top dog's reporting to in management? The next level down. The idea is we're providing situational leadership where I'm down here asking, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I support you? How can I grow you? How can I coach you? How can I make you a better employee? And as we do this, and we're giving more responsibility to those above us, you're not doing everything yourself. And what we're doing is growing and developing employees who feel like they can be a vital part of the organization. Does that make sense? I used this the other day to talk about teaming and how things have changed. Most organizations today, I won't say all of them, most of them fall into a blend somewhere. Okay. Very few do you find. You may have this pyramid type model, but it's not totally autocratic anymore. You know, they don't work anymore. Now you might have the military and things like that have that autocratic structure, but even them, they are modified to some degree. But you can't just let your employees totally run free and make all decisions either. All right, that's not going to work. So you have to find the blend between the two. And this is how we do it with the situational leadership. So let's talk about that. So not only are there 4 levels of your styles, those are great to know, but unless you understand where your employees are, the developmental of your employees, there's a big piece missing. So D1, that would be the person I would say that's sitting here at who needs the directing. All right, new employee. Let's take the brand new employee. Low competence, high commitment. That's that directing, telling. So they do lack confidence. All right, they lack confidence. You need to direct them with precise directions. You need to help them problem solve, maybe give those precise directions on things. You make the decisions. All right, so this is the developmental level of that employee. Doesn't have much experience, doesn't have confidence. Maturity level is probably low in terms of the readiness for what you're doing. All right, Again, the D2 goes to that coaching role, the coaching level. They need some coaching, some competence, but low commitment. This is where this commitment piece drops because of inexperience. Maybe inexperience in doing the particular job you're giving them, inexperience because they're new to a job. All right, you're going to find this out like with new hires. We talked on Tuesday about the generations. These Z's coming in, they're going to think they know a lot. I'm warning you. But they got to start here, you know? Most of them, to some capacity, you're going to be working here and moving through this, all right? Praise a lot, boost morale, because remember, the commitment's starting to drop. I often see a 3-month point, and you tell me if you've observed this or if there's a different marker, is sometimes when this happens. We're gung-ho, and then we feel like, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. I'm not sure I understand this. It's different than I thought it was going to be. And sometimes right about that time, then it seems to take a turn. The praise, the building their morale, telling them they're doing a good job, building confidence. They also need to be a little bit involved in decision making. You're not going to let them take the reins and make all the decisions, but a little bit they need to be involved in decision making. Why? Why do you think it's important earlier on to allow them to make some decisions or be involved with you? Not make the decision, but you're asking for their input, you're asking for their thoughts. Why is that important? What does that do for an employee? Yeah, they have buy-in, they feel needed, they feel wanted, they feel they're adding value. Huge, they're adding value. D3, again, is the other one. What is the supporting one or the participating one, like a lot of you had? High competence, they're getting it, but that variable commitment, and they don't need a lot of direction because hopefully that skill level is building by that amount of time. However, they're still going to need that encouragement and they're going to need the support, especially if they lack commitment. By the time an employee's been there for a while and their skills are definitely built, why do you think there could be a lack of commitment? I have seen many times in organizations, that new person, oh, they're so excited. Oh, this job, it's going to be so cool. I'm so excited about working here. And then somebody goes, yeah, wait till you've been here for a few years. You're going to hate it. Happens all the time. So when the other employees are not talking positive, definitely that also can have an impact on a person's lack of commitment. Also, you have to, as leaders, looking at the job, looking what you've asked this person to do, and are we playing to their strengths? Hopefully, when in the hiring process, they understand well what the job's going to be, and we can kind of flush out if this is a job that's going to match up to their strengths before we ever hire them. But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And we have somebody in a job, and there may be a frustration and a lack of commitment because it just does not play up to their strengths. Give you an example. Wright State used to have a center in downtown Dayton. It was at the Kettering Center. And I had 2 young ladies working there who were both very good at their jobs. I mean, they were good employees, they were loyal, they came to work, they did what they needed to do. One worked in kind of a back office, no windows, kind of off out of the way, and she was the person that coordinated a lot of our functions and activities that happened there at the center. The other one was out front, greeting everybody who came through. She was not a greeter. She was very quiet. She hated chatting with people. She didn't want to discuss things. She was not a chit-chatter. And the girl who was in the back with no window was Miss Personality, loved people. And so finally the girl at the front desk came and told me she was going to quit. She hated her job. She didn't want to be out there. I said, well, what would be a job that you think you would like? We just had a discussion. She goes, I would love Ellen's job. She's back there, away from people. So, in thinking about it, I had a conversation with Ellen, who hated being back there. So in terms of playing to the strengths, instead of having Tammy just quit, we came up with a decision between the 2 girls that they were going to trade jobs. I had to clear it through the university and all that. It was just such a good move. Tammy, who had all the skills in the world to do the job, but there was very low commitment because she hated it. She was not a people person, and that's not the person you should have as the front face to Wright State University downtown. We moved her. Loved her windowless office in the back away from everybody. Ellen thrived at the front desk. You could come to the Wright State and maybe do some training, hold a meeting, whatever you're doing there, and maybe you didn't love your experience, but you loved Ellen. You loved Ellen. So sometimes just looking at a role, a strength, what we're doing can absolutely keep people from thriving if we're not in the right situation. Situational leadership, as we talk about it more, you're going to have conversations with your people. It's spending time getting to know your people, knowing their needs, what is happening. I had no idea, really, that Tammy was that unhappy until she came to me and said she wanted to quit. And then D4 is high competence, high commitment. These people, you wish you had a whole organization of them. You really do. You know, they're willing to able to act with little or no supervision. The commitment's high, the skill level's high, the competence is there. You give them clear roles, you let them go, but there has to be some limit to their authority too. Self-managed teams was a big thing that came out back in the 90s. And one of the biggest mistakes that organizations made was, oh, a self-managed team, you just go forth and do whatever you want. Turned out to be a disaster for a lot of places. There still has to be limits to people's authority. You have the buck stops with you guys. You have to have limits to that. Empowering employees. I can do a whole day on talking about employee empowerment, but empowerment with clear boundaries and clear goals. This is what this level is for, this development level. Awareness of employee strengths and the areas of improvement, there's definitely a benefit of this. Starting those highly effective coaching conversations. This is critical, but by doing that, you have to know what leadership style to use. This is where we're going to practice here in a minute, knowing what leadership style to use. I can coach you, but I have got to have an idea of where you're at developmentally. Are you D1, 2, 3, or 4? Where are you? And then I can choose where I need to start in terms of my style. Make sense? It speeds up development, especially of new teams, new employees. It develops employee engagement, big time. Drives behavior change and results effectively by being able to communicate with a common leadership language. Employee engagement, this is not what it is, the conversation is today. I have done a lot of research back when I was at the university, throughout the university, and through organizations throughout the greater Miami Valley. And we did a lot of discussion and this exercise, I guess, for no better word, that we would do on gauging employee engagement. And pretty much it says about 30% of the workforce is fully engaged, 30%. So that's leaving 70% of the workforce not engaged in some level, all right? We figure roughly about 30% are totally disengaged, enough where it could sabotage you, all right? The other 40% or so are at different levels of disengagement, and only 30 are about engaged. That's a big number. That's a big number for you. And it didn't matter if I was doing schools, it didn't matter if I was in departments at the university, it didn't matter if I was in manufacturing, whatever kind of company I was in, it statistically almost every time it came out that way. I kept thinking this would be a great doctoral dissertation for somebody to do the research. What are we doing wrong? What is happening in our organizations that we have that many people disengaged? You know, 70% is high, and it comes out that way almost every time. So developing employee engagement, I think some of the things I have learned through being in a leadership position myself and doing the training and consulting and working with organizations is that it's not rocket science. It's spending the time with your employees and getting to know them. This is why I love the situational leadership. Do I personally use this when I was running the center? Yes, I personally used it. Did I use it every time? No. Did I use it lots of times? Yes. Does it work? Yes. Give you an example. And this is one that happens a lot, and you probably have had it happen to you. Have an employee. She's upset with another employee. Okay. Cindy, you need to go talk to so-and-so about this. This is the conflict. Yeah, I'm not going to go down here. We're going to start up over in here. And I'm going to say, Shireen, sounds like you have an interesting situation there. I want you to handle this. That's probably really more over here. I want you to handle this. I want you to figure out the best way to work through this conflict, and then you come back and tell me how it worked. Was that what Shireen wanted to hear? No, that's not what Shireen wanted to hear. Shireen wanted me to go fix it, but I'm not doing her any favors by just fixing it without them trying first. You can intervene later, but they have to. So I'll support you, probably over here, I'll support you, but you're gonna have to go do it. Result, she put it off and put it off and put it off. Finally, she went and did it after she found out I wasn't gonna cave quickly. And she goes, thank you. I mean, it's a lesson that through situational leadership, giving her the empowerment, giving her the support to go do it, that she felt good about herself afterwards, key, and the conflict was resolved and the relationship improved between the two people, all right? I watch calling it an opportunity too, because people are going, oh yeah, this is an opportunity for what? Something more neutral, like situation. It's definitely. Flip with me into the second stage of your handout. So as I already mentioned, it's not enough to know the situational leadership styles, it's how to know how to use them in unique situations. Bottom line, that's what we're talking about. There's 3 skills that help influence situational leadership. Diagnosis, that's where you learn the needs of your people, all right? So you know where to start on this. The other is flexibility. You have to learn most of the leadership skills to be able to be a whole manager. You can't just stick with your preference. We've talked about management theories, that total person theory, where we really do need to connect with the whole person. This comes from getting to know your people, knowing where to start with them. And again, partnering. You have to learn how to come to some type of agreement with employees and the leadership style that they need from you. Ken Blanchard has written a lot of books on situational leadership. He was one of the guys that founded it, along with a guy, last name's Hershey. It might be Paul Hershey. It might be Ken Blanchard and Paul Hershey. He's got multiple books out. Just Google them on the situational leadership piece. But understanding this, what they need from you. What they need from you. This is that whole relationship piece. It's huge. So we've already talked about the direct behavior. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I am going to have you go to page 2, and we've talked about this. His research has also shown that there's 2 factors that determine performance or achievement, and that's that competent piece and that commitment piece, because this whole situational leadership and the time you spend with it is bottom line improved performance. Is what we're looking at. So anytime a person is not performing well without your supervision, all right, it's usually a competence problem. You may not know how to do something, all right, more so than a commitment problem, or it could be both. It's one or the other. And understand that the competence, again, is a lack of skill, lack of experience. They need more training. What happens is you get a new employee in, and we may train them. If somebody doesn't really understand it, and you ask if there's any questions, and nobody raises their hand, sometimes that person is not willing to say, I don't get this, because they don't want to look like they don't understand in front of you as a supervisor and other employees. That happens all the time. So going back through and doing follow-up is critical here. So it's the confidence and how well they can do their job. Understand there's a difference between ability, all right, a person's ability to do the job, and their competence. Ability is just a natural skill that you're born with. You have a strength, you have a skill, you do it well. Competence is developed, and with appropriate direction from you as a supervisor, it can be learned. So that's the good news. Just because somebody isn't super skilled at something to start with doesn't mean that they can't develop competence. Interviewing. When I was interviewing, all things being relatively equal on the skill level, I would hire the person with maybe the personality I felt like that would go best toward the job, and the enthusiasm. Because I can train your skill sets. You can't train personality, really. So pay attention to those things. Don't think just because somebody has gone through in a certain area and is now at a D4, they're always going to stay at a D4. Things can happen. So this is the point of understanding this. Your D4 may end up back at a D2 sometimes, I'm really big on having employees help you do things, all right? I find I get the best results. Not that it always works every time, okay? But have him help you. I mean, he's got a job description and he's got goals already, behaviors already in there. What's the problem? What's the biggest thing we need to work on? You help me set a goal of what needs to happen. Multiple goals. If you've done that and it's not happening, then it's probably goes up to an HR and a disciplinary thing. Tuesday we had a workshop on the generations, and as you have the millennials coming in and Gen Z coming in who think they can do lots of things, and they can be on the phone, they can text, they can do this and that. Maybe they can, but they're not doing it to their capacity because you can't. You can't. That is true. There is a lot of research on that. Just another example too. So I probably spent the last 5 years, I was at the university with internal training. Well, we had a department, I won't mention the department, but they got a new director, and it was an important department at the university. And I will admit she inherited kind of a mess when she came in. I will give her that. But she didn't know really what to do with this mess. So she had people who had been there a long time and were capable and were doing the job. But I think she felt like she had to prove so much. Everybody got managed from a D1. Everybody. Hands-on. She micromanaged. She would redo things that you did. She would put these crazy hours in doing work that belonged to other people and departments because she didn't trust anybody to do it right. And so you had people who effectively were D3 and D4 being micromanaged and treated on this D1, and it was a mess. It was a mess. I ended up working with their leadership team, and we had trouble from the whole department. I mean, it was like a year's worth of training, leadership development, staff development, and she never could change it. So, and I really liked her. But I finally had to write the letter recommending that she be terminated. And I was coaching her at the time, and I finally she was telling me, she hated the job too though, you know. She said, my stomach hurts, I come in the parking lot. I said, you've got 4 more years to work before you retire. Do you want that every day? And she knew what she was doing wrong, and she tried to change it. She'd bring candy into work thinking that was going to change everything, and while they appreciated it, it didn't change the behaviors. And it was kind of too late by this point in time. So I terminated her. I recommended she be terminated, and at Wright State, depending how long you were there, you got so many months, and they put you in a different job. The different job they put her in was remarkable for her. So she ended up staying at the university till she retired, but she was terminated from her director role that she had. We actually remained friends. We went out to lunch forever until I left. So it was like somebody I terminated, and it really was the best thing. But you can't keep managing people from D1, and she couldn't get past it. It wasn't within her to change, all right? So kind of looking at your employees, and just because somebody's been there for a long time doesn't mean they're managing or supervising right. And she just couldn't make herself go up, you know, through the ranks of it. And it really was kind of too bad. But again, your employees are going to be at all different levels. And Ken Blanchard makes no qualms to his employees that what he's doing. Situational leadership, I'm going to lead you in where I feel best matches where you are now. And not everybody is going to be treated equally in terms of how I manage you. I'm going to be more hands-on with some of you right now. I may be more laissez-faire with somebody or delegating, and that's okay. That's where you are now, and that's the style I think that's most appropriate for you to use. And it's always been a conversation with him. And that's, I think, what I appreciate about all this. All right, everybody kind of look at one for a second. Jill's been asked to develop a budget for a very complicated project that's important to the company. She will need to put in a lot of time on weekends just to get it done, yuck. And she hasn't seen enough of her husband and kids as it is. You guys have been in that situation. I'm sure it's overwhelming. Her boss has told her to tackle this project on her own. She's concerned that she may not be good enough to grasp the entire project. She wishes she could get more direction from her boss and more help from others, but there's no time, which is frustrating. What developmental level do you think she's at?
We said D3.
Okay.
She needs that support and encouragement. She needs a sounding board.
Yes, she does.
Because
Yes.
obviously she's competent. She's been given
Yes.
this very high-level project. And I think with a little bit of additional just direction and support and just someone that she can bounce things off of, she could do it just fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. D3 is what I had. Again, going to the supervisor. What can I do for you? What do you need from me? Being available to help somebody, because you're right, she is
Right.
capable, or she would have been given the project. Right. Okay. Who has 3?
Me.
I gave Melissa. Jill's boss wants an assessment of each of her employees' strengths and weaknesses. One of them will be selected to take her place when she's promoted. Her written assessments in the past have always been perceived as fair and comprehensive by her employees. The company respects her opinion and knows she has done a great job developing each of her employees. Jill wants the opportunity to influence the choice of her successor. Where do you think she's at?
I said D4.
I would say she's probably there. What do you guys think? Obviously trusting her opinion, going to hire who she recommends. Yeah, that's a good one. And I gave you guys 5. Poor Jill, cut expenses by 10%, decrease profitability. She's concerned that the cuts will have an impact on her department's ability to complete an important project that is already underway. So we got this project, they want to cut. She believes that if she delays making the cuts, she can streamline some procedures over the next 2 months and show us savings. Jill's convinced that this is the best approach and believes she has her boss's support. His boss has asked her to make her case to his boss. She's nervous. What if she's not persuasive? Where do you think Jill is at?
You said D3. We felt like she knows it, she has it, it's just supporting.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Absolutely. Again, she's been asked to do things that you're not going to be asked if you're not have some competence. With any of these things, if you have any questions or anything you ever want to ask, you know, about I got this employee, I need some ideas. Jody has my number, my email. Feel free to call. I mean, I do not mind helping at all, or at least trying to pull through some of my experience. I mean, probably don't have all the answers, but maybe I've been in that same situation. This is what we did. So anyway, please feel free.